All right. Thank you for joining me here at another episode at American Overwatch. And we are going to talk about Russia and Maskarovka. Basically, Maskarovka is the Russian military deception campaign. It's their sort of bread and butter when it comes to information warfare and denial and deception, and basically putting misinformation out there. And essentially, what's happening in the United States is this dissent and this civil unrest that's basically being perpetuated by foreign actors. One of the biggest um, one of the biggest evidence um, that's come to light is because of the 2016 elections. Many people believe that the Russian Trump campaign or the President Trump campaign colluded with Russia in order to win the 2016 elections. In reality, what ended up happening is that for whatever reason, um, the GRU, Russian's intelligence agency, the GRU, Russia in general believed that they perceived that a President Trump would be better for Russia rather than a President Clinton. Now, I don't believe that's necessarily true. I also think that it's very difficult to put your thumb on what it is that Russia's end goal is. Uh, Being an intelligence analyst for several years, I did find it very difficult to understand the Russian culture and uh, to understand their end games. They are very good at Maskarovka. I mean, they have um, an extensive history with it. So, with that being said, um, I also wanted to go. Not only I also wanted to touch on something that I became aware of. Um, so basically, the the Ukrainians actually tried to help Hillary Clinton get elected. So this goes so deep. So the Ukrainians, um, and, so Russia hacked the DNC servers and all this other stuff. Then there was an investigation into that, and lo and behold, Ukraine was involved, and it this is insane. So just when you want to stop and think about what you know about Crimea and the Russian annexation, and it goes so much deeper than that, and it even reaches into American politics. So on one hand, on the left hand, you got the liberals, and this is what I'm seeing. Okay, so on the left hand, you got the liberals in Ukraine, Ukrainian support, and their investigation and all this stuff, and Manafort's basically involvement and all this other stuff. And then on the other hand, you got Russia, and you got their perception of the President Trump being better for them. Now, in the Mueller report, at no point did they ever say that the Trump campaign or President Trump himself was ever aware of colluding with anybody from any Russian agency or business entity, for that matter, in regards to the 2016 elections. In fact, they actually go out of their way and say that they were either A, unwittingly providing information to an actor, or B, um, didn't provide any information, even though there might have been some sort of meeting. So essentially, the meeting was benign. So Mueller goes out of his way to point some of that out. I encourage everybody who's seeing this video right now to, I'm going to post it after the video, to go to americanoverwatch.org/resources. If you don't have an account, it's free to create one. Create a membership account. You don't have to put your phone number down. If you'd like to, if you want to put it down, you can. Um, you do have to put a real email address down. It's going to ask you to verify yourself. So go ahead and do that. And then it's free, and then you can go in and download anything that you'd like that we have uploaded. I will make the Mueller report available for you guys to download after the video, and it's quite long. I think it's 448 pages. So the first several pages of it is sort of like the scope of the investigation, but then it starts to get into the nitty gritty. So one of the things I wanted to show you guys,
First of all, in a
sorry about that. One of the things I wanted to show you guys is basically this section here, this paragraph here, and it starts to talk about Russia and their involvement in social media accounts and things like that. And you can see that they've aligned themselves with several different political parties. You see here what they tried to show is the Tennessee Republican Party, and then other basically grassroots groups that they've tried to do, such as anti-immigration groups, Tea Party activists, and Black Lives Matter protesters. So, um, so yeah, I mean, this is the redacted version. There's a lot of investigation that's still ongoing. So, let's get down a little bit further. It talks a little bit more about like the social impact. So basically, so so you basically can see. Sorry about that. You basically can see that that the IRA, which is the Internet Research Agency (LLC) for Russia, they basically set up thousands of, well, hundreds of accounts, which affected thousands. Each account affected hundreds of thousands of people, and collectively they affected tens of millions of people. So they effectively changed the perception in the perception of the American people. Now everybody has their own ideas and their own ideology and what it is that is right and wrong, and our own principles and values. And our own principles and values sort of are it's what our moral compass is. We all believe that people shouldn't go hungry, and a good person believes that a person shouldn't go hungry. But where we differ is how that person should be fed. So Democrats and social media, I mean, and socialists believe. Let me just stop this real quick. Believe that you should feed these people by essentially giving them a fish, whereas Republicans believe that you should teach that man to fish, right? So that's the difference in ideology. So socialist and far left Democrats believe, you know what? Everybody who's got a surplus of fish should give up some of their fish to people who don't have any. And Republicans are saying, listen, I worked hard for all my fish. I like to stick them in the freezer for a rainy day, um, when I can't catch any fish, so that way I still have some. Um, and I also like to give that fish to my kids one day. But how about instead of giving my fish away, I go out and I teach that man how to fish? Again, that's the difference in ideology, and its foundation and its core is different. And you start to wonder, like, how did America get to a place where so many individuals in the United States just believe let's especially after Venezuela and Hong Kong, how do we get to a place where more and more Americans are believing that giving away fish is a better idea than teaching people to fish? I mean, in today's day and age, with the internet readily available at the palm of your hand, we still have grown adults who don't know how to change tires, who don't know how to change their oil in their car, who are afraid to do that kind of thing. They get stuck or stranded on the side of the road, and God forbid they don't have a towing service. They're stranded. They panic. They have anxiety. I mean, this is where we are today, and I'm getting off topic a little bit, but the reality is that most of this ideology is being driven by information warfare from Russia and from China. Okay, Russia is about destabilizing the United States from within, creating civil unrest, basically invoking emotion from both sides of the fence. Okay, so you got extreme rights and extreme lefts who are going at it, who are looking at the social media stuff, and they're basically without any fact finding, without any research, without any prior knowledge to the fact that they're being deceived by misinformation perpetuated by foreign actors. They have they don't think about this kind of thing. They don't think that this is even remotely possible. And in America, we don't censor the internet. So you are getting the full bore and the full might of the world's and the foreign actors, the governments around the world who are affecting your perception. So if you don't have a critical thinking cap and you don't put that on your head and you don't stop and say, whoa, wait a minute. Let me ask some questions here. And not only ask the questions, you got to A, ask the right questions, and B, find the answers to those questions. So how do you even know what the right questions are? I'll tell you what the right questions are. Start with the who, what, when, where, and most definitely try and answer the why. If you can't answer the why, they probably aren't involved because there's no A, motive, and B, there might not be any connection at all. It might be denial and deception. Okay? So it's most important to figure out the why behind almost anything. Why is someone doing that? What is there to gain? What is there to lose? And does it make sense for that person or organization to do what it is they're doing in order to get what it is that they desire? That is the hardest part that you need to answer. Okay, Maskarovka is huge in Russia. It's always, and that's something that Putin has learned in the intelligence field in Russia. He's huge. It's huge with him, and you got to understand that. Another thing is go to the CIA fact book, look at the world leaders, look at their bios, and read about who these people are because you'll have a better understanding of who these foreign actors are in their basically biography and what it is that they were involved with before they became leaders of these countries. So now, like I said, on one hand, with the Democrats, you got somebody from the Ukraine who's essentially trying to help the Democrats, and then you have this war in Crimea, and it's funny because you also had Obama, who sanctioned, who provided some sanctions against Russia, right, because of the release of emails from Hillary. I mean, it's kind of scary to think about how the U.S. politics has such a reach into these nations and how they affect these nations, and in turn, how those nations respond. Russia was like, okay, we're not going to do anything about the sanctions, but they didn't have to. They were creating instability within the United States through Maskarovka, and they were leveraging social media. And here's the evidence right here in the Mueller report. So, I mean, you just go through. I mean, Kids for Trump. I mean, Jesus. I mean, they had hundreds of them, you know. And then here's the list of how many, how many United Muslims of America had over 300,000 followers. Don't Shoot Us Facebook group had 250,000. I mean, they're all sides of the spectrum, and they're just creating this dissent and the civil unrest within the United States. Okay. Now, enough about Maskarovka in the Mueller report. Okay, what I wanted to show you a video that one of my buddies found regarding Ukraine and the Democratic involvement. And this isn't where it's going to lie. American Overwatch is going to continue investigating this, and we're going to put it on our line graph. We have to limit the scope of our investigation, especially within our link analysis, because in some ways, almost everybody is linked somehow. And we have to limit that scope of our investigation. We just can't just throw everything on a map, on a graph, and say, okay, this person's linked to that person, that person, that person. We got to figure out, we got to limit the scope of our investigation so that way there's not like a billion links going off of one person and you can't understand how everything fits. But with that being said, let me show you the video.
First of all, in April, former Prosecutor General Lysenko, the good guy, remember, that came in after the bad guy was taken out? He decides to give an interview with Ukrainian media. And in that interview, he makes a stunning comment. Quote, "I don't know how, but the Americans got an audio recording of Mr., how do you say his name? Sitnik, of his conversation." Now, that's the guy who ran the Anti-Corruption Bureau. He was resting with his family and friends now and discussing how he'd like to help Hillary. Huh. So the guy who was in charge of the anti-corruption, they caught him on tape talking about how he'd like to. Well, let me play it for you. Now, this is the first time, strange because it's been out in the newspapers in Ukraine, this is the first time that we know of that this has been translated by anyone in the media in English. I just want you to listen. Now, the speaker you're going to hear is Director Sitnik, and this is what he said. Listen.
Я думаю, що так. Я ж йому теж не йому, а Хіларі допомагав.
Тоді ви там трохи шатнули, да.
Я це так пишуть там.
Ну, мені кажуть, що Хіларі погано було, не дуже.
Wow, Clinton Foundation.
Ну, я наскільки пам'ятаю, ви говорили, що для нас не було ближче Хіларі.
Ні, Трамп же ж він чисто в нього внутрішні питання домінують над зовнішніми. А Хіларі це якби це із тих політиків, що вони гегемонія Америки в світі. Для нас це так лучше. А для американців лучше так, це те, що Трамп робить.
У нас зараз ці американські стосовці, це баба, мужик.
Ми ж оприлюднили дані про Манафорта, якого посадили. Манафорт ж був керівник цього виборчого штабу Трампа. Ну, я ж тоді це сторонив, зараз, в тому числі за те, що пропонують почати бухгалтерію, посадили там, можливо, 80 років позбавлювали. І Трампа барабан, там ж у них система працює чітко. І коли були вибори, за неділю до виборів, FBI поновили розслідування відносно Хіларі. У неї рейтинг упав на 7%, і Трамп натяжкою переміг. Я таки можу зрозуміти, що Трамп воює з FBI, і коли його доганяють. Якби не FBI, то він би не був президентом. Вони Хіларі погасили рейтинг на 7%.
Wow, that seems pretty kind of wow.
Well, okay, so it just gets crazy, right? So Artem Stichnik, it was the National Anti-Corruption Director of National Anti-Corruption Bureau of Ukraine, and so I'm not sure if he's been replaced by President Zelensky or what the case is. That's what I'm trying to research right now. He was appointed by the previous President Poroshenko. I think that's how you say his name. But anyways, nonetheless, you got Ukraine somehow involved in the Democrats, and the Democrats are involved in Ukraine with Joe Biden and things like that. And now that the new president's in and he vows to basically eradicate corruption in the Ukraine, we might see some changes, especially with this guy. And obviously, he wanted Hillary Clinton to win, and he was trying to do whatever they could to help her win. But then on the other side, you had Russia releasing thousands of emails via WikiLeaks, and so with every time Hillary Clinton would come out with something, WikiLeaks would basically just release something after they had hacked the DNC and all that stuff. So So Hillary Clinton wasn't going to win at all, and then she wasn't going to win the women's vote. She wasn't going to win. I mean, there's a slew of things against her to begin with, especially the stuff like Uranium One and all that other stuff. So she wasn't going to win, and even with or without Russia's Russia's misinformation campaign. But I bring this link analysis chart up because right here we have Oleg Deripaska. So he's basically a Russian oligarch who owns these two business entities in Russia, and he gave $1.3 million to a lawyer, Adam Wallman, who basically arranged a meeting between Mark Warner, and Daniel Jones, who was a former staffer for none other than Dianne Feinstein, who is a ranking member of the Senate Judiciary Committee. It's all very telling when you start to look at some of this stuff. So not only does to some degree some political party in Russia perceive that Trump was probably better for them, but you also had, on the other hand, some Russian oligarchs perceived that maybe Hillary Clinton was probably better for them, or the Democrats are better for them. So this goes deep, guys. This really goes deep. The corruption that runs rampant in the United States government, in the politics and things like that, is deep. It's huge. So American Overwatch will continue to go and dig deep into all of this stuff. We're going to use the Mueller report to link some of these guys together. We're also going to use the video that we just played for you guys. Hopefully there was audio. So we're going to use that video to link some of these folks together. And we're going to see how these politicians play a part. And I find it incredible and very interesting that you have two political parties within the United States linked to almost two separate entities within. So you basically have, now, mind you, there was no one wittingly, as far as, well, there was a few people wittingly participating with foreign actors within the Republican Party. But at no point was President Trump aware of or wittingly participated in any of these things. So he was sort of unwittingly, he was an unwitting benefactor behind the release of emails and things like that were basically destroying Hillary Clinton's campaign. And he benefited from that. So that's not sort of like a campaign finance fraud thing or anything like that. It was just sort of like a by proxy sort of kind of deal. And there were some people that were involved. I think the Mueller report goes over that. That's why it's imperative to read the whole thing and get both sides of the coin, and then make your own decisions as to what's really going on. So again, we're going to go in, we're going to look at these guys, we're going to see how they're all involved. Another thing that brings me down this rabbit hole is trying to discern Antifa and trying to figure out how many of these Antifa groups actually started out as Russian IRA-backed groups. I venture to say that there's probably a lot more in there than we think. So, and if not, how many perceived neo-Nazi groups were created by the IRA, and in turn, in retrospect, Antifa basically retaliated. So they're retaliating against this misinformation campaign from Russia. Okay, so did they get brainwashed by Russia and Russian Maskarova tactics in creating Antifa accounts and then recruiting real U.S. citizens into these groups, in which sort of took a life of their own? Or did Russia create fake neo-Nazi groups and Antifa responded because of this misinformation? That's the questions that I have, and those are the answers that I'm going to try and seek. And then furthermore, if in either case, did the Democrats or Republicans provide financing to these social justice warriors and the Antifa groups, which are creating basically violent protests in the West, the Pacific Northwest, predominantly, and we see in Portland, Oregon, but also in different parts of the United States that we're seeing. So those are what it is that we're going to try and answer, and we're going to see how deep this rabbit hole actually goes. So thank you so much for watching American Overwatch if you made it to the end. Also, please, if you guys find our content interesting in all the research that it is that we're trying to do, we support your guys' donations through Patreon. Please go to this link right here and provide any donations you can. It'll help us with the FOIA requests, public records requests, things like that. If you have any questions, comments, concerns, you can always post them here on the video. Please don't forget to subscribe. Click on the bell, and it'll let you know when we go live next. And if you just want to remain, if you don't want to comment publicly, if you just want to send something to me, you can always do it over here at my email, and I'll respond to you as soon as I can. Again, thank you so much for watching American Overwatch, and we'll see you on the next one.